Senator Roche is in favor, Senator Groen's in favor, not wishing to speak, Senator DeBlois, Senator White in favor, do not wish to speak. And a lot of these names seem very familiar to me. I don't understand why that is. David, you're not on here. Do you wish to speak?
Actually, Senator, I think I am, but I'm on a separate
Another sheet.
second page. Yes.
Well, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm David Scanlan, Deputy Secretary of State. Here not to take a position on the bill, but just make a few comments. First, Senator Carson mentioned this bill includes photo ID for obtaining a ballot, but it also includes a lot of other things. As far as the photo ID component is concerned, she also addressed the concerns that I mentioned in my testimony before the prior bill, that a person be required to present a photo ID, not be turned away from the polling place without voting if they're qualified and don't have an ID, and also the burden upon the local election officials not be increased dramatically, making their job that much more difficult. And I think she did accomplish that in her version of the photo ID requirement. However, the position of our office would be that we prefer the version as with the proposed amendment that Senator Prescott brought forward earlier. And just a suggestion is that perhaps the photo ID part of Senator Carson's bill could simply be removed, and then treat the other items in the bill dealing with domicile and changes to the various affidavit forms as kind of a distinct policy piece of legislation moving forward, disassociated with the photo ID issue. And I think it would be much cleaner if you do that. I'm not prepared to make any, take a position on the domicile issues in here. It's a really public policy issue that the legislature has to deal with. I think there are some good suggestions there, but I'll leave that up to you to decide which is best. And I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
David, we appreciate that, and I'm sure your input will be appreciated by Senator Carson and others that are working on this. Thank you. All set, committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, still.
Good morning.
David. I had a question, and I think it's also pertains to the other bill, but I'm getting a little confused because I haven't seen the amended, or haven't totally read the amended version of Senator Prescott's. But the question I had to do with the procedure whereby the Secretary is dealing with the letters of identity verification that the Secretary of State would cause to be mailed to a voter who completes an affidavit. And it has to be mailed within 90 days of the election. And then, there's language in the end of Senate Bill 318. There's language about, the process that's set in place if, that letter is returned. In other words, if it looks like that person doesn't live there anymore. That's stating it correctly. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, if you did talk about this with the other bill while I was across the way. But, I'm envisioning one situation, naturally being from Durham, I perhaps think about college voters more than some others. But if, say, a student voted in November, and then they graduated, they were done, Durham is no longer their domicile or residence, if we want to call it that. That seems like a potential problem for me. It's a situation that would not indicate any kind of fraud. It's just that there's reason that they don't live there anymore. But that this letter process could catch them up into a process that perhaps isn't appropriate.
Right now, by statute, our office is required to send a letter to first-time voters that register on the day of the general election, the November election, without a photo ID to prove their identity. The first time that we did that statewide, there were approximately 200 letters that were sent out. The last time we did that mailing, there was around 50. So There are not a lot of people that show up to register to vote without having a photo ID prove their identity. And that number seems to be actually going down. Now, I understand that we are talking about people showing up at the polls to obtain a ballot, and if they don't have an ID, then this letter would be sent to them, and I think we would expect the number to go higher by quite a bit, but I can't define what quite a bit is, whether it's, instead of 200, it's going to be 1,000 or 5,000 or more. The other thing that this legislation does is that it requires an affirmative response from the recipient of the letter that we send out. And so that will require us, to make the program effective, it will require us to also send a return mail piece that has postage paid on it, so that it's an incentive for the voter to send that back to us. And then if we do not receive an affirmative response, or if mail comes back to us as undeliverable, we turn that information over to the Attorney General's office, and they will follow through by investigating each one of those. The pieces that we have sent out that we had experience with, I don't believe there are any instances where they could not determine that the voter didn't vote properly, that there was an explanation as to why the piece came back as undeliverable. So we have a positive experience with that. Unfortunately, until we get into this, I can't tell you what the cost is going to be, other than to say that for us to do a mailing with a return mailer piece with postage paid, that it's probably going to be $1 per voter to make that happen. So if there's 5,000 we have to send out, it's going to be $5,000. If there's 20, it'll be 20,000. I think the bigger cost is going to come into play when the Attorney General's office gets the names that they have to follow up on, and whatever process they go through to make that happen. And I think they're best suited to answer that part of the question.
Everyone else set? Dave, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Croc TV.